Attack on Titan started out as one of my favorite anime of all time, and the first season still ranks very high on my list of some of the most entertaining anime I've ever watched. And at one point, about 2 years ago, I held it as the only anime that I found to be worth watching among a sea of mediocrity. I've since gone back to watching anime at large, as you can probably tell, even though since then, I've come to see it more as a mixed bag than anything I love or hate outright. I still think the world within the show is one of the most interesting and ripe with potential for careful expansion, world building, and explanation. Now, was it handled carefully? That is completely subjective and likely would be best left as a topic for another day. Overall though, the show had gripping lore, captivating visuals, unparalleled sound design, and music that stands out as easily the most memorable aspect of the entire show. Yet, with all this praise, there's something I simply can't give it all too much credit for, as this is the category in which it suffers the most and it's terribly clear. That would be the character department. Unfortunately, the characters on the show have always felt more like character archetypes than actual individual characters with thoughts, emotions, and personalities. Mikasa is just the driven to protect who she cares about heroic character who excels through determination. Armin is just the guy who's actually really smart and knows better than the old guard if you give him a chance. Levi is the hyper-efficient, doesn't take any bullshit from anyone veteran at the job. They have backstories, yes, but they lack the elements that make them truly interesting. And it hurts to say, but the character who suffers most from this is the protagonist, Eren Yeager. Across 59 episodes, Eren has been the most consistently inconsistent and vapid protagonist in any series I've ever seen, and I watched My Hero. And I say that from as much of a point of objectivity and non-bias as possible. Eren has done nothing in my eyes that solidifies him as a worthy protagonist in the show, and the worst part is that based on how all the other characters are set up, nobody else even fits the role any better than he does. You can't replace him with Levi or Mikasa because it just won't work. Now, the reason I say that he is a poor protagonist is based on the principle that there are two types of characters: a passive character or an active character. An active character is one who is proactive and whose actions and or decisions drive the character forward or the plot forward in a dynamic way. And a passive character is one whom the story kind of takes place around and forces them into a place of relevance therein. This principle is very important when crafting a protagonist. There seems to be a common misconception, however, that a protagonist needs to be an active character in order to be compelling or for the story to be interesting, and that's not the case, and Eren being a passive character is certainly not why I don't think he works. There have been plenty of passive protagonists who serve just fine. Spider-Man in Far From Home, Aang, Goku in Z and Super, Wolverine in Logan, and Dante in the first Devil May Cry game. These characters all end up thrust into circumstances that drive their stories forward and end up adapting in a way where they still end up as interesting characters throughout the story, and eventually answer the call to action and either evolve into an active protagonist by the end of the story by accepting responsibility that they initially ran from or something like that, like Dante rising up to face Mundus, or they remain passive and end up enforcing the story through their passivity, like Aang rediscovering energy bending in order to avoid killing the Fire Lord. Eren, however, has glimpses of these sorts of things, and I'll get into it here in a second. I can tell you're already commenting about how Eren is totally an active character because it was his mother's death that drove the events of the show, or it was his actions and decisions that kickstarted everything. But I ask you, why exactly was Wall Maria breached and who was behind it? Someone with far more interesting potential as a character than Eren had, that's for sure. I'll try not to spoil too much. One thing that Eren immediately suffers from is that his goal to kill all the Titans isn't a very achievable or tangible one for the audience to latch onto. Compare it to Naruto's goal to become Hokage. There aren't any clear-cut rules right away as to what makes someone worthy or not of becoming Hokage, so there's really nothing that stands in his way, so it's kind of a given that at some point he will become Hokage, and the audience is kind of along for the ride. Luffy wants to find the One Piece and become the king of the pirates. The One Piece exists, and with the fortune that he'll gain from finding it, he will become king of the pirates, so of course it's a tangible goal that we can get behind. Goku wants to be the strongest fighter around, and if he continues to fight people who are progressively stronger than him and climb the power ladder that way, he will eventually get there. Eren just has a blanket kill all Titans goal, and without a clear-cut way to get there, it just isn't relatable or interesting. Now, Eren is the one who decided to join the military to pursue that goal, and so that he and his friends wouldn't be treated like scum anymore or be left to starve. He has these moments that can trick you into thinking he's an active character, but if you peel back even the thinnest exterior layer, you can tell that this is hollow and borderline manipulative. After he joins the military, he loses almost all agency. His cocksureness, arrogance, pig-headedness, and reliance on others shine incredibly brightly, and he almost can't even get through training on his own. Eren's story is effectively over as soon as it started until he, as it turns out, got injected with some miracle Titan juice years ago, and is just now transforming into one, and is now humanity's best shot against the Titans. This always felt so cheap and unearned to me. I don't know if it was meant to be that we weren't to expect that Eren was anything special outside of being the main character, but his powers had never manifested or activated in any significant way until this very moment, and it feels lazy. Meanwhile, Mikasa, whose main aim is to protect him because of her feelings toward him, ranks first in the class. And the military wasn't even her idea. In fact, she also has so little agency that she pulls with Adele and cuts her hair just because Eren told her to. Then the event at Trost happens, and all their training looks like it's about to pay off. Until... happens. Over the course of the show, particularly in vital moments like the Historia retrieval, the Battle of Trost, or the reclamation of Shiganshina, Eren's direct involvement in these scenarios, whether they rely on his Titan form or not, nothing he does therein is a decision he makes for himself or a plan he comes up with. I understand that Eren is not exactly a master planner, as that isn't his character role, but he basically just sits around and watches Erwin, Levi, Mikasa, and Armin roll the dice with his life and determine what he does next, and eventually it gets really old. That's another advantage Naruto and Goku have, is that they do make decisions and they do choose to involve themselves in the grander events that take place and aren't always just thrust into situations where they only act when instructed to do so. Eren doesn't have that advantage, with the express exception of situations such as the confrontation with Annie in Season 1, in the mini arc where he was being held captive by Bertholdt and Reiner after finding out the truth about them, leading up to probably the best battle he has against them. Eren versus any other shifter is undeniably Eren at his best, especially Reiner. You can see the growth he's had as a character when he's fighting him, but I particularly like the anger and rage he feels at the betrayals he's being subjected to when finding out his comrades are the reason his life took such a dark and grim turn in the first place. His fight against Annie is one of my favorites in all of anime. However, moments like that, where he takes charge and puts everything on the line, not relying on anyone else's help, are too few and far between and don't distract from his weaknesses. His biggest one being the one that most people find to be the factor that makes him the most interesting. Let's focus strictly on his nature as a Titan shifter. Eren was given the ability to turn into a Titan 5 years before the main events of the show, when he was turned by and then forced to eat his father Grisha, who himself was at the end of his 13 years, and passed on to him the traits of the Attack Titan and the Founding. The Founding Titan isn't something that comes into play until later, so we'll focus on the Attack Titan. When he's first discovered, the military of course thinks they have a traitor in their midst, and their first instinct is to eliminate him. However, Armin's quick talking is what leads him into being used to plug the hole in Wall Rose. Then later, Hanji of course wants to push the limits of his Titan form and see what else he can do, which leads to him learning and mastering the hardening ability, which goes on to help in the third season with Wall Maria. And his Titan nature is what makes him interesting to Bertholdt and Reiner in the first place, driving the second half of the second season, and having the Founding Titan is what leads to his capture, driving the first half of the third season. At the beginning of the series, Eren was training to become a soldier who killed Titans in efforts to try and reclaim the world for humanity. Although, all that matters about him is the fact that he turns into a giant monster. Goku, beyond being a Super Saiyan, is an exceptional martial artist. Naruto, beyond having a fox sealed within him, is an exceptional shinobi. Maka, beyond being half Death Scythe, is an exceptional Meister, and I could go on. However, beyond being a Titan shifter, Eren is a barely functional soldier who didn't get his first kill in his human form until nearly 30 episodes into the series. He and the rest of the cast had become completely reliant on his Titan abilities, so much so that Mikasa, despite knowing what Eren is capable of, is still committed to his protection. That's kind of ridiculous when you think about it. I don't say any of this to say that the show is bad strictly because of the weaknesses of the main character, nor do I hate Eren or even the show in general. This is just something that became noticeable to me in the second season and became unbearably obvious in the third. Now, if Eren is still your favorite character in the show, that is your opinion and you're totally entitled to it. If he's your favorite protagonist in any show, again, that's your opinion and I respect it. I just ask for that same respect regarding my opinion. Please leave a like if you enjoyed, and consider supporting the Patreon. That would be really helpful in these trying times. Speaking of these trying times, be safe, everybody. Till next time, be kind to each other, and remember, we're all we got.